we're coasting through the week. I've got this really cool large coaster mould, and we've also been 3D printing again a lighthouse. So let's go play. Hello everyone, I'm Lula and welcome to NerdGoblinart. So I've got this really lovely mould, and it is from the company Mould. They have an offer on for £1 at the moment. I've got some inks out, we'll look at those a bit more in a minute. The mould is available for £1 with another tray mould, in fact, when you purchase resin from them. And that's what's on the mixer at the moment. So this was printed on our Bamboo Lab printer, which is a filament printer. And I love the idea of doing another like trinket tray, but with an ocean and the lighthouse. So we're going to be pouring into the mould and creating some like oceany type colours. I've never done it before, it's not something I have ever done, so we'll see how we go. So I wanted my mixer to do most of the hard work for me, because I do get pretty achy wrists with stuff going on, and then I want to really stir up and really bubble up this resin. I'm still trying out the new debubbler that Resiners very kindly sent me, and I just want to create a lot of bubbles, and then we're going to have a look and see how well the debubbler does. I did a test just the other day with clear resin, with glitter, and also mica powders in resin. So today we're going to be mixing up inks, alcohol inks, into the resin, and we'll just see how well it does in the debubbler as well, and how clear and such. So yeah, so I'm doing what I don't usually do. I don't usually stir this roughly into the resin. I usually take my time, because I don't want to be causing bubbles. So don't do this. If you don't have a debubbler, you know, take your time and stir in gently is the best way. I'm going to be using a few different colours in this one. I wanted to make it like a marini type green type thing. So the other one has lake blue and ultramarine blue, and this one just needed a little bit more. But as I say, I've never done this before. I've never like created an ocean scene, and it's going to include waves, and again, something I have never ever done. So it's going to be interesting for me, and I have never actually painted an object, like a building or anything. I've only ever painted characters and soldiers and stuff when I paint at Warhammer miniatures, but I have never actually painted scenery, so to speak. So this is all pretty new to me today, and I'm kind of looking forward to it. I was feeling a little bit overwhelmed at the same time, I have to be very honest, and I was like, I don't think I'm going to be able to do this. So yeah, so we're gonna do. It's gonna be fine. Everything's fine, and I'm adding so many different colours into this one as well. Oh dear, I feel like I just wasn't sure, but it'll all be fine. And once again, I'm really stirring it up just to make sure we got lots of bubbles in there, because I want to make sure that we get a really good try with the Air Pro. So in it goes. I've put it on for a 10-minute setting. That's an AI setting. I said in my previous video that you get 5, 10 and 15 minutes set on the AI button, which is really useful. And of course you need to make sure that the stopper is in the back of the machine. So we've gone through a few minutes and look at those bubbles. They really are coming up. And I am really liking the size of the main body as well. You can fit like 3 cups in there, so we're going good. So it's all finished, and I'm going to unplug it just to make life easier and then release the valve. I did give it a few moments. Now the only issue I do have with the machine is the lid is a little bit difficult, but as you could see there, I just used my body. I have a height issue as well. I'm challenged as a short person. So yeah, but it's look at that, it is amazing. So I'm really liking this machine. It's so nice. So I'm saying so a lot again. I annoy myself. That is so super clear. I have never had resin that clear before. And I'm not just saying that. This is a true and honest review. They haven't paid me anything. They just want an honest review. So yeah, I'm so far I'm really impressed. It's my second time using the machine. Well, basically the third, because on my previous video I used it twice in one video. And I was actually calling Mr. Goblin. That was just a piece of fluff that had managed to drop in from somewhere. I was actually calling Mr. Goblin. I was like, look at this. And he was like, wow. And I'm like, I know. So very impressed. And if you can hear Bilbo, he's fine. I say in every video, he's talking. He's like, no. So there we are. And it's on a like an old cutting board I use when I'm doing clay work, so I could transfer it and get on with painting the lighthouse scene. So while that's curing, I can get on with painting this guy. Now it is a filament and it has been pre-sprayed with black Citadel paint. Very useful, and it really gives you a good base to work on. I've never done so. I've already said this. I've never done this before, so I'm going on things I have learned from painting on canvas. So layers are a thing. I've said it in many videos when I've painted something. I really do rely on the ability to create layers. So I'm going to be doing a mixture of titanium white, phthalo blue, and also burnt sienna. Now I want the lighthouse to be white, but I don't want it to look pristine white either. I want the impression that it is a really old lighthouse, and it's also like nighttime. So I'm going to start off with, it's like a dirty blue. I'm not really sure what to call it. And I do go a little bit too heavy in some areas, and you'll see me in a little bit as well. I'll go into some Mars black just to pull those down a little bit. I do apologise if the zoom occasionally goes out. Is one of those things, painting like miniatures and stuff can be a little bit difficult. I'll sort out the window spaces afterwards. This first part I knew was going to be a little bit of a messy job, So I wanted to get this done as the first part. Thank you to the people, I should say, who have been buying me coffees. There's the QR code in the corner. It is truly appreciated. Money that I used just last week went into purchasing bits and pieces for my filler drawer. So stuff that I like to put into makes, like into resin or even into miniatures. So thank you very much. That's exactly what it's for, and it's really cool. So thank you. I'm using Mars Black from Senlier Abstract, and this is just because I realised that I was going a little bit too heavy in some areas where I should have been a bit more careful in keeping the black undertones, and I just noticed that I missed that bit. So I've gone into that like dirty blue mixture, and I'm just adding the Mars Black so I can create shade so that it doesn't look so strange, like two-dimensional when it is a 3D model. It still needs to have its shading, and with the darker spots, the darker areas, where the building falls and stuff. It just really helps. So I'm going to let that dry between coats. I'm not painting wet on wet. It's more going into more of the realms of a bit of dry brushing. And what I'll do with this layer is go more into the white and burnt sienna, but more so with the white. Less of that blue mixture that I created using the phthalo blue. So we're coming out of that a bit more, and you can see there on my tile where I'm figuring it out. That's why having like kitchen towel next to you, you can see it just in the corner there. I can dab it on there and also decide if that's what I'm happy with. So this is going to be my next step. So yeah, I think I'm happy with that. And I've just changed my brush to my this is like my fuzzy brush that I like to favour. This brush is old. It is very, very old. I've mentioned it in a few videos, and it takes a few moments, but I realise that it is so used now. It's not working the way it usually does, and it was taken off. I think I was just using it a bit. There's just not a lot of brush left of it, so it was starting to take off a few areas of paint that was already on there that I'd already picked. So it started taking a few chunks out. So I think sadly, very sadly, this is the last time I'm going to be using this particular brush, which is kind of sad. It's weird, I know it's weird, but I am weird and I own my weird. But I get attached to things, and I feel oddly sad when I can't use things anymore. So I was like, oh. Once I realised that it was taking bits off, and I had to change my brush up. But there you go, and another strange and wonderful fact of being me. I'm also using my hand to to help me with knowing how much paint is on the brushes as well. And as I said, this is the first time painting something like this, like a structure, and I wasn't, it did take me a good few minutes to figure out a comfortable groove, to figure out which way to go with the dry brushing. In a way, it's a little bit higgledy-piggledy at first, but then I do start finding my feet a little bit and then getting a bit more confident. I always try and tell myself that it's just painting. Treat it as if it is. Sorry for going slightly off screen. We'll be back in a moment. Treat it like it's just a canvas. It's just a different kind of canvas, and I'm just colouring in. So sometimes it does take a few moments for that thought process to start properly kicking in. It's the point where the slightly overwhelmed, out of your depths feeling starts passing a bit, and then properly find, yeah, this is working, I can do this. It's also knowing to work past that messy stage. Whenever you're painting, there is always a messy point, and everybody that paints has this point, and you're often like, is this going the right way? Is this going how I want it to go? And you just got to push past that, and everything will eventually start coming together. You're doing your layers, your shadows and all that. It really does start making sense, and you start hitting the point, and you can start going, yeah, this is working. But I think everybody gets like this when they are painting, and unfortunately a lot of people are like, oh, it's rubbish, I can't paint, and they put it aside and maybe don't ever pick it up again. You just got to be patient, just a little bit of patience, and just push past that ugly stage. Believe me, I was very, very, I felt I wasn't out of my depth at all, but I felt like I was, until I really started getting into it. And I just needed to remember all the stuff I've ever learned painting on a canvas and painting miniatures. It is surprisingly new to me, painting anything other than a canvas. I've only started picking it up in the last couple of months, and last year I started painting more of the Warhammer stuff, and then the 3D printer came along, and I've just been really enjoying doing stuff with that, and just saying to Mr. Goblin, I'll suddenly have an idea pop up in my head and it's almost like the world's your oyster. And I can think of, all sorts of things, and I can suddenly just, get what I've got in my imagination to come out in a 3D way, and not just on a canvas kind of way. Sorry, I'm waffling. So I'm just going into some dark colours. Like I said, I went a little bit too heavy whilst I was finding my feet with this painting. So I'm happy with that. It's looking good, and I'm just going to let that layer dry. So back again from that, and I'm going more so into the titanium white now. Still with the mixture that's already on that tile. By now as well, as you can see, I've changed brushes. More of the titanium white, and it's working a lot better. It's not taking or causing any harm to the model. And I want to explain as well. It's just a bright, and I also, and it's a little one, and I felt a lot more in control. A light this brush, so never be worried about changing up brushes. Never be worried about using several brushes. Awesome if you're able to paint and only use one brush in one sitting. You need to use what's comfortable and what feels right for you, and don't worry about anyone else or what anyone else might say to you as well. And I've heard many people who paint and do stuff that they don't like to use black in their work, and you're like, well, why not? It's there for a reason. So I've let that layer, I'm going to let that layer have a little think and a little rest, and we're going into using cadmium red, and I'm mixing that cadmium red with the burnt sienna that's already on the tile, and I will also be adding some Mars black. This is my first layer for the roof, and I also managed to get it in places that I don't want to get it, but I will, when you're quick enough with acrylic paint, if you get a clean brush with some water on it and you're very careful, you can remove that paint, which makes life a lot easier, because covering it over, I think the cadmium, it's a proper cadmium red, it's a golden heavy body one, so it is quite a strong paint. It's very highly pigmented, so got to be careful, and I just wasn't being as careful as I should have been, so we all know. I realised that I wanted it less, I wanted to work up a bit more to the lighter tones of red on the roof, so I added some black in. So this is a clean brush, and I'm just dabbing it in my jug of water and very gently using the water to simply take away the red that I managed to get in the places I didn't want to get it, and that's brought it up lovely. It's obviously, if you're not quick enough to do that, you will have to cover it back up, but as I say, because it's proper cadmium red, I think it would have taken a few layers, so we would have had to have dried completely and then gone probably back into using doing the layers and starting from the first layer and building it back up again, so it would have been a bit of a pain. So I'm adding a slightly more brighter light source now, and this is solely the titanium white, and this is where I'm picking up where the light is hitting or could be hitting. So we're working our way into more of the dry brush, using only the titanium white to give us that final highlighted pop. Because as I said, I wanted this lighthouse to be white, but it's dark and it's at the ocean, so it's I want it to look as if it's really weather worn from winds and the sea crashing up against it. So it's not going to be an absolutely perfect looking white, but it does have those elements that it was perfectly white at one point. And just going back into the darker colour, I didn't even clean my brush, just to put back a little bit of shadow in. So I'm doing my next layer on the roof, and it's more so the cadmium red and just the burnt sienna, but more into the cadmium red. And this is just giving that extra layer and trying not to take too much of the first layer out towards the back because of any shadowing that the lighthouse part of the building would be causing. Again, I want the roof to look like it's weather worn and a bit beaten, but I still want to have a few elements of having the brighter red tones, and there will be a slight more highlight to it. So I'm going to be using just the Mars Black just to tidy up the windows, and I won't show all of that because there's no need to. It's just going carefully, and I've downsized the brush to a pretty small one. So those are all in. The very top ones, I wanted to have the idea that a bit of the light is casting down from the actual top of the lighthouse. So I've made sure that the very top windows got a little bit of an element of the white. And I'm just going into the titanium white on its own, just to give a sharper highlights on the corners of the building. I want this area to be the more precise area where the light is just turning to. So I'll be adding another colour to this later on, but the white gives me a really good starting point. And now I'm onto a lighter highlight onto the roof, and this is just the cadmium red by itself. Not too crazy, because like I said, I wanted it to look as if it's a bit of a worn roof, but it still has elements of where it was like quite new, or where it's had a paint job or something like that. I imagine that I don't know. I don't know if it would be made of like metal or anything like that, but I like the look. I like the colour of it. It gives her a little bit of interest. I'm going to start working on the base now, which is a very rocky terrain. So I'm going into Mars Black, Phthalo Blue, and a little touch of white. The Phthalo Blue, I really like using Phthalo Blue with Mars Black when creating like a base colour. It's a little bit more interesting than just using black on its own, and it's a good starting point, especially for building up. So this one I'm going to be basically covering the whole model, I'm not dry brushing it in. I'm not skipping over parts. Well, the deeper parts, yes, I'm just going to leave those alone because the black is there. The black is fine. So it's like a very dark navy. And then once that's finished and it's dried, we can then add a bit more of the titanium white to the mix and start bringing it up and add in the highlights, and it really will start looking like rock. So Coasting Through the Week is a collaboration started by Mary from Resin Me Up, Martha from Marvelously Artsy, and Tammy from Epoxy Me That. So they do it and a few others join in. I'm joining in like every other week because I got other things that I like to do, so I thought it's good to do it like maybe every other week, and they very kindly let me do, you know, they like people to join in whenever they want to, really. So I've just added more titanium white to that mix of Mars Black and Phthalo Blue. And as you can see, because I'm using my hand as usual, you'll see the differences in the tones. And I'll show you on the camera as well. And this is more dry brush. I'm not worried about going too far into the to the rocks, because this is your lighter bit. This is where bits of light are catching it and we're shining off. And I can do the steps as well. I figured that the steps potentially were part of the rock, you know, or they could, you know, whatever. But, you know, that's what I've done. And, you know, as usual, I do say this every time I'm doing mixed media pieces and painting on. If you think you've gone a little bit too far, just let it dry and just start again. That's the beauty of the acrylic paint, is you can just let it dry and start again, and you know you can put in and take away as much as you need to, really. We're going on, no, we're still making the same tone. This is just the stairs, and again I'm not going crazy. You can just see there, I'm just going up and down, not going side to side or anything, or painting individual steps. There's no need to. You know, the human brain will put the rest in. You know, the human brain will recognize certain things and fill in everything. So while the rock's having a little rest, I'm just breaking out the not the Mars Black, that is the cadmium medium hue. It's not a full cadmium, but it's more of an orangey red, and it's absolutely perfect for giving you a highlight on red without a lot of people will start adding white to the red, and that's just going to give you pink. You can add zinc white and it'll lighten your colour, but it won't change it. I do have zinc white in the drawer, but I also have the cadmium medium so I'm just happy to do that. So as you can see from my thumb, this is my lighter tone for the rocks, and that's looking really good, and I'm really pleased with it. I'm still tapping it into that mix of the Mars Black and Phthalo Blue, but it is more heavy on the titanium white, so this is going to be more of the highlight. And because, see there, I want my light source coming down here, so that's where I'm concentrating more of the titanium white on its own. And there's going to be a further highlight that I add to that as well. I'm just putting a little bit of it around there. So you've seen me use this before if you've been with me. This is Dirty Down. I used it recently on a dragon trinket box. I will link that video in the description box below, because it is, I think it's a really good video when you want to learn about different materials that you can use, different mediums. This moss colour is absolutely perfect for areas that have been wet. So obviously this lighthouse is on a rock at the sea, so I'm concentrating the moss colour in the darker crevices of that rock, and then we'll build it up around the bottom as well. And I decided to put some towards on the stairs as well, because the sea can come up quite a bit, can't it? You've seen it on video. It's quite scary. It must be I think, brave people that go in lighthouses like these, you know, on a rock. And sometimes they're like on like a small island, and when the tide comes in, they're basically cut off until the next day. Yeah, scary. And the great thing about this dirty down is that it is water based, so you can add on your layers, you can add more, you can, if you add a lot to a certain area, it will dry like a clumpy, like it will dry like clumpy. And, if you keep adding to that area, which is pretty cool. It's a pretty cool effect. But what else you can do with this is you can just add water to it. What I'm doing is I'm just dipping my brush into my water jug, wiping it off a little bit, and then, as you can see, I'm just going around with the water into the moss that's already on the model. And it's blending it in, and it almost gives like a seamless effect. It makes it look like it was meant to be there, and it has been there for some time, so I really do recommend this stuff. It's a really good stuff. It's like magic. It really is like having magic in a bottle. Yeah, and if I can do it, I think watching enough videos and tutorials, and if you really want to pick it up, it's possible. And I was overwhelmed. I've honestly not done it before, and yes, I know I've got experience with painting, but it really is different. It really is. It's really something different to do, and just implementing stuff you've learned from watching other creators. It's a big help.
The grass is talking, it's sweet green bliss. Sunshine spills through the old oak tree. Spring's in the air and it's calling to me. The sparrows are nesting, their stories untold. Bees are buzzing.
So how do you think that's looking? If you're still with me, thank you so much. Thank you to my subscribers, and thank you to my members. I appreciate each and every one of you. So I've let that dry, and I've pulled out, and I'm not even going to attempt to say it. It's Citadel. And this is a wash, which is a really cool thing. They're really useful, these. And where I've painted the white, popping this on really does help it pop. And as I said, I wanted that to be my light source. Again, I've never done this before. I'm just going off from watching other creators, mainly from like the Warhammer creators, and speaking with Mr. Goblin as well. It's not something he's done himself either, so It was like, do you remember watching such and such? Yeah. So, you know, let's try this. So, yeah. I'm actually really chuffed with this bit. I love the idea of the light casting down and just catching on those bits of the rock where I concentrated more of that titanium white. Because of course yellow can be a really difficult colour, so a majority of the time it is best to get your areas with white so that you can really take that yellow to the next level. So I'm happy with that. So it's just a case now of the next stage. So I'm still so happy with that. This is a few hours later. It's lovely and dry, and I got an extra. I used the last little smidgen of resin and popped it into this little pendant mould, and I grabbed one of my turtle charms from my drawer and I popped it in, and do you know what? I'm really pleased with that. I think we need to do a video on making little charms like this. I think it's pretty. I'm really pleased. Really pleased. So on to the coaster mould. It's a nice mould. I gotta be fair. I'm pleased with the colours, but I kind of wish I'd gone a different way with the greenies. The first thing I have noticed though, you can see the outline of the supports. I've not had that before, in all honesty. It's not a problem because that's going to be getting covered up, because we're going to be creating... I'm sorry, we're not finished yet. I wanna create some waves. This is where I'm just debating, you know, use my hands, waves. Mr. Goblin suggested it go in the centre, but I don't think that works. I think it needs to go to the side because I want it like a display, maybe a trinket dish, something like that. Okay, so it's the following day. I've got out the J. Diction UV resin, and last night I glued the Lighthouse into place. I just used a regular kind of glue, and it's had a good few hours and it's not going anywhere. Right, the idea is I want to create an ocean with waves. This project is an all never done before kind of thing, only from what I have watched from other creators doing, and a little bit of winging it. I like winging it. It's a hobby, it really is. So I've watched, I would say probably more so Michelle from Glitz and Glitter, doing the kind of sea type effect. I would say she is the only one I've really watched doing these. I know other creators have done it, but I just haven't really watched many others. I've not caught their videos. I'm going to be using the UV resin to create this, and of course my heat gun, just to put it into directions. Now, I don't have a heat gun with all the bells and whistles, with like a directional nozzle. So it took me a few moments to kind of work my way to where I felt a little bit more confident. I had wanted to do this part in the evening because of the natural sunlight, but I ran out of energy and I really wanted to get this project done, so I am working a little faster where possible. I've obviously sped this part up because this video would have been going on probably 2.5 hours if it was on a regular play. So I've used the same alcohol inks that I used for actually making the coaster, and that is Lake Blue and Ultramarine blue. So I'm doing a little bit of a mixture of those, and I'm using, I think I showed you a few moments ago, I've just got white mica powder by Let's Resin. I have got ocean white, but I was a little bit concerned it might have been a little bit too potent for the UV resin. I don't have any like coloured UV resins, which is a shame. I just haven't gotten around to getting any as of yet. So it's just a case of kind of taking my time, and you try and imagine in your head what the waves could look like, and I wanted a stormy sea. The tide is in, and I want waves to look like they're all coming in from directions. There could be rocks underneath there, so its effect is making it a bit of a swirly whirly stormy type of sea, and that's what I want to go for, and I think it's working. I am going to try and build up around the base of the lighthouse, at the base of the rocks, and as you can see here, I've got my torch and I'm just teasing the UV resin up. This is what UV resin is great for. Now you can do this kind of effect using epoxy resin, but as you know, I'm impatient. But because I wanted this specific effect with teasing the wave kind of colours up onto the rocks, I knew that I could do that by using a silicone tool and teasing it. And also every now and again you'll see me spray some isopropyl alcohol, that because you act quick enough with the UV resin with your light or your torch, you'll get a bunch of cells in there from spraying your isopropyl alcohol, so that helps as well. It gives that little bit of extra. I'm making sure that the UV resin is going right the way round the sides as well, even where the back of the model is. If you've been watching me for a while, you know that I don't like to leave anything. I don't like to leave blank spaces. I think it needs to be, well done, and it needs to be fully done. If I choose to, I may or may not, at the end of the project, I might put a thin coat of epoxy resin on top of this, because there's enough room to allow for a bit more. But this isn't a coaster for a cup. And if you're making coasters, you should really be using your epoxy resins that have a high tolerance for heat, for when you're putting hot drinks down. And UV resin is going to get sticky, so it can do. So use your epoxy resins for your top coating of your coasters. But this is my idea in my head. It's a trinket tray, and you may live or love the ocean. You may live by the ocean or love the ocean. I love the ocean. It scares me. I think it's a scary, monstrous thing, but I do love watching it and I love being by it. And I just thought this would make a really cool trinket tray, coin, if to sit on a side table in your hallway, to have, and you could pop rest your keys in there, you just pop your glasses on there, sunglasses or whatever, and that's kind of where I envisioned for this. So it's not a massive concern to me using the UV resin on its own. But as I say, I might, if I'm pouring another project in a day or so and I have a little bit of clear left over, I might just pop it in there just to give it that little bit of an extra coat. But I think it really works. Because this is my first time having a go at this, I was actually really enjoying it. I don't know why I've shied away from the technique for the longest time. I have no idea, but I'm also not really done any makes that I can really remember that are ocean or sea based. I've got a few molds and stuff which are like seahorses and whales and stuff, but for some reason I just haven't done them yet. So I'm hoping, obviously I've done the sea turtle, that's probably it. That's probably the only thing related to the ocean that I've done. And I thought this was really good practice, really, because I really want to do an ocean scene inside my giant sea turtle. So again, I'm using my UV torch and my silicone tool, and I'm teasing up the white UV resin up a little bit onto those rocks to give the impression that it is rising and hitting the sides of it. It's you just gotta be careful doing it. It's not difficult. I do this kind of thing a lot when I make some things that have, you know, like dragons. If I'm missing the top of a horn, or the axolotls, for instance, those are terrible for their gills. If you've done it, you know. So I always do this thing where I just tease up the UV resin whilst I've got a light shining on it, and you know, it's quite cool that you can do stuff like that. And did you know I have a membership option? At the bottom of the video, you'll see a button that says join. And if you fancy it, for $3.99 a month, you can help support my channel, which is really cool. And it helps me afford materials. It helps me, you know, progress more with creations. You get access to Nerd Goblin album. There's 2 of those now. I give you sneak peek pictures. I'm trying my best to get into the groove of doing like a monthly exclusive for members only video. That's I'm going to be doing over the next few days following this one. We're going to be doing a jewelry video. And you also get, I said pictures, you get an album, and I'm going to be drawing our first giveaway before the end of April, and it doesn't matter where you are in the world, I'll be posting it to you. So at this point I decided to turn the camera off because it was going to take me a while. So what do you think? I'm really pleased. It's the first time I've ever tried something like this. We've got a lot of firsts in this video, and it goes to show, you know, watching other creators and taking in their content, you can really pick up some stuff. And so I'm really looking forward to trying this again. I really am. So Coasting Through the Week is a collaboration by Mary, Tammy and Marva. I'll link them below. Please check out everybody else's videos. Love you and stay weird.
In a room full of colors and swirls, Nerd Goblin art draws a magic world, with foxes that prance and badgers that dance, a whirlwind of dreams with a single glance. Gerald the alligator grins so wide, in enchanted waters he loves to hide. Dragons breathe wonder with flames so bright, each creature born from a magic night. Nerd Goblin paints life in every brush, animals frolic in a vibrant rush, from canvases to tales